In the shadow of Mount Elbert, a determined climber was about to face both nature's fury and human doubt. What started as a routine expedition briefing took a shocking turn when she came face to face with a mocking expedition leader. Clara Thompson wasn't your typical adventurer. For years, she had honed her climbing skills in Colorado's rugged peaks, known for her fearless resolve and sharp instincts. When Ryan Carter laughed at her ambition, she had no idea she was about to redefine strength, turning a climb into a powerful journey of empowerment. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Denver's late afternoon sun slanted across the city streets, throwing long shadows over the brick facades and alleys of the old warehouse district. Clara Thompson paused at the foot of a steep incline in the foothills, the faint scent of pine and wet earth in the air. Her climbing shoes dug into the gravel as she surveyed the path ahead, muscles coiled with anticipation. This wasn't a casual hike. It was the beginning of a ritual that had defined her life for as long as she could remember. Mount Elbert, the highest peak in Colorado, loomed in her mind like a challenge and a mirror at once. Every step on this trail was preparation, a test not just of her body, but of the resilience she had spent years cultivating. Clara's phone buzzed in her pocket, reminding her of the mountaineering meetup downtown. She exhaled, wiped sweat from her brow, and started jogging toward her car. The city streets were alive with the bustle of commuters, cyclists, and early evening pedestrians, but Clara's mind was elsewhere, focused on logistics, weather reports, and her own mental preparation. She could hear Anna's voice in her mind. "Ignore the doubters, Clara. You've got this." That simple encouragement was a lifeline against the constant undercurrent of skepticism she faced, especially as a woman aiming to conquer a mountain traditionally dominated by male climbers. The meetup hall was buzzing with excitement, the smell of new climbing gear mingling with the faint metallic scent of chalk. Posters of past expeditions adorned the walls, each a frozen testament to human endurance. Clara navigated through clusters of climbers and onlookers until her gaze fell upon him, Ryan Carter. Even from across the room, his presence was magnetic. Tall, broad-shouldered, confident to the point of arrogance. He stood among a group of admirers, recounting a particularly grueling climb with animated gestures, a self-assured smile plastered across his face. When he noticed Clara approaching, his smirk deepened, and she felt that familiar twinge of challenge ignite inside her. "You're planning to climb Mount Elbert?" His tone carried amusement, the kind that suggested disbelief rather than curiosity. "By yourself? Or are you hoping to tag along with a real team?" Clara lifted her chin. "I'll be joining an expedition," she said evenly, meeting his gaze without flinching. Ryan laughed, a sharp, cutting sound that drew the attention of nearby climbers. "Interesting. Usually women aim for something manageable. That mountain isn't forgiving. Are you sure you know what you're getting into?" Clara's jaw tightened, not with anger, though the spark was there, but with resolve. She felt the old, familiar surge of determination, that deep, unrelenting need to prove herself. This wasn't just about the mountain anymore. It was about confronting a world that had long underestimated her. Anna Reyes, her best friend and climbing partner in spirit, nudged her gently from behind. "Don't let him get under your skin, Clara. You know what you're capable of." Clara nodded, though inwardly she felt the challenge settle into her bones. Ryan's laugh had done more than mock her. It had lit a fire, one that would not be quenched until she had climbed every ridge and faced every peril Mount Elbert could throw at her. Eli Brooks, an experienced local guide, had been observing from a distance. His eyes, sharp and assessing, followed Clara's every movement. When Ryan had turned back to recount another tale of his own accomplishments, Eli approached Clara. "You've got fire," he said quietly, his voice calm but firm. And brains. Most climbers underestimate Mount Elbert, or themselves. If you approach it right, with respect and caution, you'll have a chance. Ignore the chatter and trust your instincts. Clara felt a wave of reassurance. Eli's recognition wasn't patronizing, it was grounded in experience. His words reminded her that preparation and intellect were just as crucial as strength and stamina. As the meetup concluded, Clara lingered to review notes, mentally mapping out the gear she would need, the supplies, and the specific segments of the climb where risks were highest. Every detail mattered. Ice axes, crampons, rope anchors, weather tracking, contingency shelters. She knew the mountain wouldn't wait for ego or bravado. It required respect, planning, and persistence. By nightfall, Clara was at her small apartment, sprawled across her desk, surrounded by maps and climbing logs. She pored over weather patterns, trail conditions, and accounts of past expeditions, noting potential hazards and strategizing solutions. Her mother's words reverberated in her mind. The mountain tests more than your body. It tests your heart. Clara reflected on all the times she had faced doubt, from peers at school, from strangers on the trails, from societal expectations, and realized this climb represented more than personal achievement. It was an opportunity to redefine perceptions of what a woman could do in spaces long dominated by men. Her phone buzzed with a message from Anna. "Make sure to sleep. You need your strength, mind, and heart aligned. Don't let him get to you." Clara smiled faintly. Anna's pragmatism grounded her, a necessary counterbalance to her own intensity. They had shared countless climbs and countless conversations about preparation, strategy, and the balance between fear and courage. Anna's presence, even from a distance, reminded Clara that ambition did not have to be solitary. Ryan Carter's laugh still echoed at the edges of her thoughts, but instead of frustration, it fueled a growing clarity. She envisioned the climb in vivid detail, the ascent along icy ledges, the careful navigation of avalanche-prone slopes, the strategic placement of anchors, the negotiations of pace and endurance with the team. She imagined herself leading, making decisions, and earning respect, not through argument, but through competence and resolve. The hours passed as Clara meticulously catalogued gear, reviewed team dynamics, and envisioned every contingency. She created detailed schedules for acclimatization, rest periods, and emergency scenarios, each note a tangible reinforcement of her preparation. Her mind was methodical, her heart steady, and her determination absolute. Finally, just before dawn, Clara stood by her window, gazing at the jagged outline of distant peaks painted against the pale sky. The mountain was silent, indifferent, and immense, a formidable adversary and an unyielding teacher. Clara took a deep breath, the cool Colorado air filling her lungs, and made her decision. She would sign up for the official expedition. She would face Ryan Carter again, not as a doubter, but as a climber whose skill, intelligence, and courage could not be questioned. Mount Elbert awaited, and Clara Thompson was ready, not for fame, not for ego, but for the test itself, for the chance to prove, once and for all, that strength is measured not by gender, but by determination, skill, and heart. The ascent would be grueling, the challenges unpredictable, but she would meet them head-on, every step a declaration of resilience and self-respect. The first light of dawn broke over the city, illuminating the mountains with a golden glow. Clara packed her notes, double-checked her climbing gear, and felt a quiet surge of anticipation. Today was the day preparation met opportunity, ambition met reality, and courage met the mountain. Tomorrow, she would step onto the trail, and her journey would truly begin. The base of Mount Elbert awaited, and with it, the assembly of the expedition team, the first moments of collaboration, conflict, and discovery that would define the climb ahead. Clara felt the weight of expectation, both internal and external, and yet, for the first time in a long while, she felt entirely ready. The mountain was calling, and she would answer, heart-tested, spirit unbroken, every fiber of her being poised, for the ascent that would challenge everything she thought she knew about strength, courage, and herself. Marcus's hand tightened on the car door handle as Clara pulled up to the trailhead lot where the Mount Elbert expedition team was assembling. The morning sun glinted off metal gear, ice axes, and polished helmets, giving the scene the shimmer of anticipation mixed with tension. Clara stepped out of her car, her backpack snug and prepared, and took in the assortment of climbers, each with their own aura of confidence, fear, and competitiveness. She recognized Ryan Carter immediately. His presence was magnetic and somewhat domineering, even in the casual chaos of the assembly area. He barked orders with practiced authority, checking gear and mentally sizing up his team, unaware that one of the most determined climbers in the group was already observing him. The first impression Ryan made was unmistakable. He barely acknowledged Clara's arrival, and when he did, it was with a raised eyebrow and a faint incredulous smirk. "You're here," he said, voice carrying the hint of doubt and amusement. "I wasn't sure you'd actually show." His tone implied that this climb would either be the proving ground for the weak or a spectacle of failure. Clara's fingers itched, not for confrontation, but to demo. As the discussion progressed, subtle tensions emerged. Ryan insisted on pressing through challenging segments quickly, valuing speed and dominance over measured caution. Clara countered each suggestion with careful reasoning, highlighting avalanche risks, shifting ice, and wind patterns. "If we move faster without considering the conditions, we're putting the entire team at risk," she argued, pointing to recent weather data and past expedition reports. Ryan's jaw tightened. For the first time, someone on his team was openly challenging his judgment with evidence rather than opinion. Anna stood by Clara, offering supportive nods and interjecting practical observations when necessary. Her presence was vital. She diffused minor conflicts, reassured team members, and reinforced Clara's points without overshadowing her authority. Eli observed quietly, letting the interactions unfold while mentally noting the dynamics. He saw Ryan's ego flare at each rational objection, and Clara's controlled persistence as both a challenge and an asset. His role as mediator would be subtle but essential in the coming days. By midday, the team had completed their initial physical tests. Rope ascents, balance checks, and endurance runs revealed Clara's preparedness. She moved with precision, calculated strength, and a natural rhythm that Ryan could not ignore. Each climb, each adjustment of gear, was a silent rebuttal to the assumptions he had made about her abilities. His smirk was now restrained, replaced with a flicker of concern, masked by professional neutrality. Despite the rigorous preparation, early disagreements arose. One climber wanted to maintain a rapid pace to reach the first camp before nightfall, while another insisted on frequent safety checks. Clara mediated, proposing a compromise route that balanced speed with risk management. Her solution, supported subtly by Eli, won cautious approval. The team's first taste of cooperative problem-solving had emerged, and Clara's influence, though quiet, was beginning to establish itself. During a break, Clara found herself standing near the edge of the parking lot, observing Mount Elbert in the distance. Its snow-capped peak glistened under the afternoon sun, a silent, imposing figure that demanded respect. The mountain's presence reminded her that no human arrogance, Ryan's or anyone else's, could diminish the challenges ahead. It was impartial, unforgiving, and yet beautiful in its majesty. Here, she reflected, her resolve solidified. The climb would test physical endurance, mental fortitude, and the delicate balance of human cooperation under pressure. Captain Walker's regulations, though not physically present, hovered over the expedition like an invisible overseer. Each decision carried weight, each proposed shortcut a potential infraction. Clara understood the delicate dance required, demonstrating competence, earning respect from Ryan and the team, while simultaneously adhering to the strict protocols laid out by Walker. It was a high-stakes negotiation between ambition and responsibility, and every choice mattered. By evening, the team gathered around a small planning fire at the base camp. Shadows flickered across tense faces as maps were discussed and roles confirmed. Ryan finally addressed Clara directly, his voice quieter than usual. "You've done well today," he said almost begrudgingly. "I can't argue with competence." Clara's response was measured, a simple nod of acknowledgement. Respect had begun to form, cautious and unspoken, built on demonstration rather than assertion. That night, as the team settled into their tents, Clara reflected on the day's events. She had navigated skepticism, demonstrated skill, and begun earning subtle respect from both Ryan and the rest of the team. Yet she knew the real challenges had not yet begun. Mount Elbert would test her beyond physical endurance. Her decisions, patience, and ability to inspire trust would be scrutinized in ways she could not yet anticipate. The first ascent was a preview of the complex interpersonal and environmental challenges ahead. Anna, lying in her tent beside Clara's, whispered, "You handled yourself well today. Don't let ego battles distract you tomorrow. The mountain will give us the real test." Clara smiled, appreciating Anna's clarity and focus. She knew that tomorrow, the mountain itself would become the ultimate measure of her resolve, demanding every ounce of her skill, judgment and courage. Eli, walking quietly among the tents, checked lines and anchor placements, noting each climber's preparedness. His experienced eye saw more than physical readiness. He saw confidence, fear, pride, and the subtle cracks in group dynamics that could either strengthen or fracture the team under pressure. Clara's ability to navigate those dynamics would be crucial. As the stars emerged over Colorado's high peaks, Clara allowed herself a moment of reflection. Ryan's dismissive laugh had been the spark, but her determination had transformed it into something much larger, a commitment to prove to herself and the world that skill, preparation, and courage were not defined by gender. The mountain was indifferent to politics, bias, or ego. It demanded only respect, preparation, and tenacity. Clara knew she had both. Sleep was elusive, thoughts racing with route plans, gear checks, and potential hazards. Her mind cycled through scenarios, sudden storms, ice slides, team injuries, and leadership dilemmas. Each scenario was meticulously examined, contingency plans noted. By the time she finally allowed her eyes to close, Clara felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. But not as a burden. It was a mantle she willingly carried, knowing that the challenges of tomorrow would demand all she had, and perhaps all she could become. The expedition's first day had concluded, but the journey itself was only beginning. Clara lay awake, listening to the wind whispering across the foothills and distant peaks. In the darkness, she felt a growing certainty. The summit was attainable, not just as a physical achievement, but as a personal and symbolic triumph. Respect would be earned, not demanded. Competence would shine brighter than prejudice. Courage would define her path more than skepticism ever could. And so, as the mountain loomed silently in the distance, Clara Thompson embraced the reality of what lay ahead. The team had been assembled, tensions introduced, and the groundwork for both cooperation and conflict established. The climb of Mount Elbert was no longer just a test of strength. It was a crucible in which leadership, trust, and self-discovery would be forged. Tomorrow, the real ascent would begin. The early morning light painted the foothills of Mount Elbert in gold and rose, illuminating the crisp, thin air as Clara tightened the straps of her boots and adjusted her pack. The team had assembled at the base camp, their breaths visible in the chilly Colorado air. Ryan stood at the front, clipboard in hand, issuing final instructions with practiced authority. Clara felt the familiar tension coil in her chest, a mixture of anticipation, determination, and the faint sting of lingering doubt from Ryan's earlier dismissals. Clara glanced at Anna, who was checking ropes with meticulous care. "Ready?" she asked softly. Anna gave a small nod, her expression a mix of caution and encouragement. Eli emerged from behind the group, observing the team's energy with a careful eye. "Remember," he said, voice calm but firm, "today is about acclimation and understanding the terrain. Don't push faster than the mountain will allow." The climb began with steady steps along a winding trail that ascended gradually, the path flanked by towering pines and rocky outcrops. Clara moved with ease, her muscles responding naturally to the climb, each step measured and deliberate. Ryan, true to his competitive nature, occasionally glanced back, assessing her speed. His expression was inscrutable, a mixture of professional appraisal and the subtle irritation of someone accustomed to unquestioned leadership. The first major challenge arose when the team reached a narrow ledge overlooking a steep drop, the rock slick from early morning frost. Ryan was the first to move across, his confidence palpable. Clara followed, focusing on precision and rhythm, aware that a single misstep could spell disaster. Anna trailed slightly behind, offering reassurance through quiet verbal guidance. Eli observed, his eyes narrowing slightly, not from concern over skill, but from the awareness of psychological pressure Ryan's presence imposed on Clara. "Careful on the ledge," Clara murmured to herself, though loud enough for Anna to hear. She focused, controlling her breath, steadying her movements as the wind swept across the mountainside. Her mind replayed every lesson, every drill, every cautionary tale Eli had shared during preparation. The mountain demanded more than physical endurance. It required mental clarity under pressure, and Clara intended to demonstrate her readiness. Ryan's voice cut through the crisp air. "Not bad, Thompson. You're keeping up." His tone was measured, but Clara detected the faint undercurrent of reluctant respect. She ignored the comment, concentrating on the climb. Anna shot her a glance, understanding without words that Clara's drive was as much about proving herself internally as it was about earning recognition from Ryan or anyone else. Midway through the ascent, the team encountered a section requiring rope-assisted crossing over a chasm. The harnesses and anchor points were tested rigorously, and Ryan, confident in his technique, led the first attempt. Clara followed, noting a subtle shift in the rock's texture, a potential hazard Ryan hadn't addressed. "Check your anchor," she said, pointing to the slightly loosened rock placement. Ryan paused, an eyebrow raised. After inspecting, he nodded slowly. "Good eye," he admitted quietly. It was a small concession, but significant. Clara's competence was becoming undeniable. Anna crossed next, careful and deliberate, her hands steady on the ropes. Eli moved deliberately, observing the group's method and the mountain's temperament. The team's cohesion was tentative, fragile, but Clara's quiet diligence was beginning to set a tone. Leadership through action, she reminded herself, not through assertion alone. The climb continued into a denser, rockier section where loose gravel and snow patches required acute attention. Ryan's impatience began to surface as he urged faster movement, attempting to maintain control and demonstrate authority. Clara, observing the terrain, slowed deliberately. "We'll move faster if we minimize slips," she called back, her voice firm yet calm. Her focus was not on defying Ryan, but ensuring the team's safety. A few climbers grumbled at the slowed pace, but Anna and Eli supported the measured approach. Tensions escalated subtly as Ryan's ego clashed with Clara's careful reasoning. He suggested a shortcut over a narrow ridge that would save time but increased risk. Clara hesitated, scanning the path and weather conditions. "It's too unstable," she said, indicating cracks in the rock and shifting snow. "The risk outweighs the gain." Ryan's jaw tightened, and for a moment his arrogance flickered into visible frustration. Yet he could not dismiss the logic, nor the authority Clara had begun to command through demonstrated expertise. A sudden gust of wind swept across the ridge, sending a small cascade of loose rock tumbling down. The team froze, each member acutely aware of the mountain's impartial power. Clara felt adrenaline surge, not fear but heightened awareness. She moved decisively, signaling the team to anchor securely and wait for the wind to abate. Eli's approving glance reinforced that her judgment had been sound. Even Ryan's expression softened, a reluctant acknowledgement that leadership required more than speed or bravado. Later, at a narrow ledge overlooking a cascading valley, Clara slipped briefly on a patch of ice. Instinctively, Anna grabbed her harness, steadying her before she fell. "Careful," Anna exclaimed, concern flashing across her features. Clara exhaled, heart racing, but she also felt a surge of gratitude. Teamwork, she realized, was not just about directing others. It was about mutual trust, reliance, and vigilance. Ryan observed silently, perhaps internalizing the lesson that strength alone did not ensure safety or success. As the day wore on, altitude began to affect the team. Breathing became more labored, muscles fatigued, and minor aches and headaches emerged. Clara felt the creeping weight of exhaustion, yet her determination remained intact. She led by example, taking care to maintain hydration, pacing, and strategic pauses. Eli's mentorship became increasingly visible as he provided subtle guidance, pointing out safer handholds, monitoring oxygen levels, and reinforcing the importance of pacing. Mid-afternoon brought the first real test of both physical and moral judgment. A small snowslide had partially blocked the path, and the team faced a critical decision: attempt to scale a steep, less stable slope or retreat and find an alternative route. Ryan, driven by ego and the desire to assert dominance, initially pushed for the riskier path. Clara assessed the terrain carefully, noting the loose snow, hidden ice patches, and the potential for cascading debris. "The slope is unstable. Attempting it now could endanger all of us," she argued, her voice steady but commanding. A tense debate ensued, the team split between Ryan's urge to move quickly and Clara's caution. Anna supported Clara quietly but firmly, while Eli observed, intervening only when preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story, necessary to provide historical context about past accidents on similar terrain. Clara proposed an alternative, a longer, safer route that preserved energy and minimized risk. After minutes of deliberation and the visible effects of fatigue, Ryan reluctantly agreed. The decision was a turning point. The mountain had asserted authority, and leadership had shifted subtly, acknowledging competence over ego. As they continued, Clara noticed the subtle ways in which trust and respect were forming. Ryan, while still competitive, began to allow her insights to shape decisions. Anna's humor and reassurance kept morale from faltering. Eli's calm mediation ensured that disagreements did not escalate into dangerous errors. The team dynamic was evolving, a fragile balance of ego, skill, and mutual recognition. By evening, the team reached a designated campsite, the rocky terrain leveling enough for tent setups. Exhaustion weighed heavily, but there was a quiet satisfaction in the shared effort. Fires were lit, meals prepared, and the team gathered in muted camaraderie. Clara, reflecting on the day, understood that the climb had tested more than physical endurance. It had tested judgment, negotiation, and the capacity to maintain clarity under pressure. Ryan, for the first time, offered a small nod of acknowledgement. "You handled that snowslide well," he said, voice neutral but tinged with respect. Clara returned a simple nod, understanding that the recognition was significant. It was not an apology or admission. It was a step toward mutual respect, forged through competence and careful judgment. That night, as the wind swept across the high-altitude campsite, Clara lay awake beneath her sleeping bag. Thoughts raced, route planning for the next day, weather contingencies, team dynamics, and the mountain's silent, unyielding presence. She reflected on the lessons learned. Leadership required not just skill, but the ability to influence, inspire, and negotiate under pressure. Trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned, and respect, even from someone like Ryan, was achievable through action rather than assertion. Anna, in the adjacent tent, whispered through the thin canvas. "Tomorrow is going to test us more than today." "Be ready," Clara nodded, understanding the weight of those words. The mountain loomed above, indifferent, majestic, and unforgiving. Each step upward would demand more: courage, endurance, judgment, and unity. Eli's calm presence lingered in her mind, a reminder that experience tempered ambition, and preparation could bridge gaps in ego and skill. Clara knew that her journey was far from over. The first ascent had tested her abilities, challenged assumptions, and revealed the subtle dynamics of trust and leadership. But the mountain held greater trials ahead, and each would push her to redefine her limits, both physically and morally. As the team settled for the night, the stars reflected off the snow and jagged peaks, silent witnesses to the unfolding drama of ambition, skill, and human will. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility, the thrill of challenge, and the quiet satisfaction of having earned a foothold, not just on the mountain, but within the team, and perhaps within the respect of those who doubted her most. The climb of Mount Elbert was no longer a distant ambition. It was an immediate, pressing reality, demanding every ounce of focus, courage, and insight Clara could muster. And as she drifted into a tentative sleep, the mountain's shadow stretched across her dreams, reminding her that the true ascent had only just begun. The morning dawned grey and heavy, the sun muted behind thick layers of cloud that hugged the peak of Mount Elbert like a shroud. Clara unzipped her tent and peered out at the expanse of jagged slopes and icy ridges, each one a silent, imposing challenge. Overnight, the temperature had dropped further, frosting the already brittle surfaces with a layer of ice that glimmered ominously under the dim light. The wind whistled along the ridges, carrying an early warning of the storm brewing above. Clara's fingers traced the worn rope lines and anchors at the base of their camp, testing tension and integrity. Every knot, every carabiner, every strap had to be perfect. She understood, more clearly than ever, that this climb wasn't just about physical endurance. It was about foresight, calculation, and the patience to wait for the mountain's mercy. Anna emerged from her tent, rubbing her hands together for warmth. "Looks rough," she said softly, scanning the horizon. Clara nodded, a silent acknowledgement that today would demand more than yesterday's measured courage. The team convened in the small clearing where the tents had been pitched. Ryan, standing tall in the wind, barked orders, his voice trying to pierce the storm's approach. "Everyone check your gear. This isn't a casual stroll. Conditions are deteriorating." His tone carried authority, but Clara could see the tension behind his confident facade. His eyebrows knitted together as he scanned the mountainside, a silent admission that the climb might not unfold on his terms today. Eli stepped forward, his voice calm, deliberate. "We need to assess the storm front before moving. We risk more than altitude if we push without understanding the wind patterns and snow density." The group hesitated, looking from Ryan to Eli to Clara. This was the first real confrontation between ego and prudence. Ryan, bristling, opened his mouth to argue, but Clara spoke first, her voice clear and firm. "He's right. We evaluate, then decide. Moving blindly is more dangerous than waiting an hour or two for better conditions." Ryan's jaw tightened. He had always relied on decisive action, sometimes impulsive, sometimes brilliant, but always centered on his own judgment. Clara's interjection was both a challenge and a reassurance. It demonstrated that leadership could be shared without diminishing her authority or the team's cohesion. Anna placed a hand on Clara's shoulder, subtle support, and Eli's approving nod gave further weight to her argument. The group huddled together, studying maps and wind reports from portable devices. Clara pointed to a ridgeline that could serve as an alternative route should the storm intensify. "If the winds shift from the northwest, we risk avalanches along the main path," she explained. "This alternative keeps us in a lower corridor and allows for better visibility." Ryan scanned the maps, tapping the route with a finger, his competitive nature warring with the acknowledgement that Clara's insight might be the safest choice. Hours passed as the storm rolled closer. Snow began to fall, light at first, then heavier, coating the rock faces and increasing the risk of slips and falls. Visibility dropped, forcing the team to slow their pace, relying heavily on Eli's guidance and Clara's careful route assessment. Each step was a negotiation with the mountain, a balance between ambition and caution, trust and survival. Midway through the morning, the storm intensified abruptly. The wind whipped sharply across the slopes, carrying frozen pellets of ice that stung exposed skin. Ryan, attempting to assert control, urged the team to push forward, pointing to the summit in the distance, barely visible through the storm's veil. Clara assessed the situation, her eyes scanning for potential hazards, overhanging snow, weakened rock outcrops, and the hidden ice beneath the fresh snowfall. "We halt here," she said decisively, planting an anchor and securing a belay line for the team. "The conditions are unstable. Moving forward now risks injury or worse. We wait for a break in the storm." The words carried authority, but also the weight of responsibility. The decision could delay their summit attempt, frustrating Ryan, but it also might save lives. The ensuing moments were tense. Ryan's pride bristled, but he did not openly challenge her. The team huddled in a small rock alcove, using windbreaks and emergency gear to shield themselves. Anna handed Clara a thermos of warm water. "You're handling this better than I expected," she whispered. Clara managed a small smile, knowing that courage wasn't just charging forward. It was having the patience and judgment to respect the mountain's limits. As they waited, Captain James Walker's voice crackled through their satellite phone connection. "Clara, your position is precarious. Ensure everyone's harnesses and anchors are secure. I'll be monitoring your progress. Don't take unnecessary risks." The official reminder of external scrutiny added a layer of pressure. Clara replied calmly, detailing their current status and emphasizing the safety measures in place. Walker's curt acknowledgement reminded her that leadership was multifaceted. Physical skill, strategic judgment and accountability all intertwined. Hours stretched on, the storm's intensity waxing and waning unpredictably. Clara and Ryan engaged in quiet, tense conversation, not fully reconciled, but mutual respect beginning to surface. Ryan admitted almost grudgingly, "You've got a good read on this." "I would have pushed forward, blind to risk." Clara nodded, silently noting that acknowledgement was a step toward understanding, perhaps even partnership. By late afternoon, visibility improved slightly, allowing the team to assess the terrain and begin cautious movement. Clara led the way, balancing speed with safety, navigating treacherous ice patches and precarious ledges. Anna assisted struggling team members, checking foot placements and distributing climbing aids, reinforcing the sense that the climb was a collective effort, not a solo endeavor. Mid-ascent, the team encountered a serac, a large, unstable ice formation obstructing the route. Ryan's initial instinct was to scale it quickly, testing his skill and daring. Clara analyzed the structure, noting fissures and overhangs that made it perilous.
"We can't go over it."
"We go around or wait until it stabilizes," she instructed, marking the passage with flags and ropes to indicate a safe corridor. The team followed, a slow but methodical maneuver that highlighted Clara's growing authority through competence and foresight. Eli observed closely, offering advice only when necessary, ensuring the team adhered to safe protocols. He noticed the subtle shift in Ryan's demeanor, less brash, more willing to listen, yet still wrestling with ego and the desire to lead. The storm, a powerful external force, had become a crucible for character development, exposing vulnerabilities, testing patience, and forging nascent respect among climbers. By evening, they reached a plateau suitable for setting up an emergency bivouac. Exhaustion and cold weighed heavily on the team, but morale was steadied by a shared sense of accomplishment. The storm had been met, decisions had been tested, and the team had emerged intact. Around the small fire, Clara reflected on the lessons of the day. Patience was as vital as endurance, foresight as crucial as courage, and leadership often required humility and adaptability. Ryan, seated across from her, broke the silence. "I didn't think I'd ever see you make the call to halt under pressure." "Good judgment," he admitted, the words grudging but sincere. Clara nodded, understanding that recognition could come quietly, without applause. It was earned through action, consistency, and the visible concern for both the team and the mountain itself. As night fell, the wind howled around the bivouac, rattling tent poles and sweeping snow across the plateau. Clara lay on her sleeping mat, tracing the stars through gaps in the storm clouds. She thought of her mother's words, echoing from childhood. "The mountain tests more than your body. It tests your heart." Today had been a test not just of skill, but of patience, judgment, and moral courage. Tomorrow promised even greater challenges, pushing physical limits, demanding decisive leadership, and testing the bonds of trust that were only just forming. Anna, preparing her gear for the next day, whispered, "We survived the storm. That counts for something." Clara allowed herself a quiet smile, knowing the mountain's trials were far from over, but also feeling the subtle triumph of rising to the challenge with wisdom and foresight. Ryan slept fitfully, a reminder that pride and ego would continue to be tested, and that true leadership was a lesson in restraint as much as in strength. The storm had reshaped the climb, turning a straightforward ascent into a proving ground for strategy, resilience, and human connection. Clara felt an unspoken shift in the team dynamics. Trust had been tested and earned. Respect had been challenged and given cautiously. Eli's eyes had noted every interaction, storing lessons for the moments that would demand life or death decisions. And above all, Mount Elbert loomed, majestic, indifferent, and ever demanding, a silent arbiter of all they had accomplished and all yet to come. As she drifted into fitful sleep, Clara knew one truth. Survival and triumph on this mountain would require more than determination or physical prowess. It would demand wisdom, patience, and the courage to make hard decisions when every instinct might scream otherwise. The mountain had taught its first lesson, and she was ready mentally and emotionally for the trials ahead. The sun rose weakly through the thinning cloud cover, casting a pale light over the jagged ridges of Mount Elbert. Clara unzipped her tent and stretched, her muscles tight and sore from the previous day's storm and cautious ascent. The air was thinner here, each breath carrying the bite of cold and a reminder that the mountain was exacting its toll. Anna emerged behind her, rubbing her gloved hands together, her expression serious. "Altitude's hitting us harder than expected," she said quietly. Clara nodded, scanning the frozen terrain ahead, feeling the familiar mix of exhilaration and trepidation. The team began their morning routine, checking ropes, reviewing maps, securing anchors. Ryan, still visibly frustrated by the previous day's delays, pushed the group to maintain pace. "We're losing daylight," he barked. "The summit isn't going to wait for us to be comfortable." Clara met his gaze evenly, understanding that the tension between assertiveness and recklessness was reaching a critical point. She tightened her harness and addressed the team. "We'll move carefully. One misstep here could be fatal. Speed alone won't get us to the top." Within minutes, the climb tested them anew. The incline steepened sharply, and the snow beneath their boots shifted unpredictably. Clara led cautiously, identifying patches of ice that could snap under weight. The altitude gnawed at her, a physical reminder of the mountain's dominance. Her pulse quickened with every careful step, and for the first time doubt crept into her mind. Could she maintain her endurance long enough to reach the summit? Ryan, attempting to assert control, moved ahead impulsively, testing the climbing path. The snow groaned beneath him. Clara's instincts screamed to call him back, but she restrained her words until the danger was immediate. A hidden crevasse revealed itself, forcing Ryan to leap back at the last second. Clara quickly moved to anchor him, her hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "You can't act like this alone," she scolded. Ryan's usual arrogance faltered, replaced with a grudging acknowledgement of her skill and awareness. Anna remained close, her eyes scanning constantly for weaknesses in footing and hidden hazards. "Clara, check your right boot. Ice buildup," she warned. Clara adjusted, grateful for Anna's diligence. Together, they navigated the treacherous ridge, a dance of precision and calculated risk. Eli's calm voice carried from above, offering corrections and guidance. Watch the ledge, team. Use the rope anchors as your second skin. Respect the altitude. It will punish misjudgment. His presence was a silent reassurance, a reminder that experience could mitigate some of the mountain's cruelty. By midday, the cumulative strain began to manifest in Clara's body. Her legs trembled with fatigue. Her vision flickered with moments of lightheadedness, and the headache behind her eyes throbbed with pressure. Each step became a negotiation between her ambition and her body's limits. She forced herself to pause, leaning on the ice axe and closing her eyes for a moment. Anna knelt beside her. "You're pushing too hard. We need to rest," she said. Clara shook her head stubbornly. "I can keep going. I've come this far. We can't stop now." But even in her defiance, she knew she was reaching a critical threshold. The team encountered a sudden avalanche path, a corridor of freshly unstable snow. Ryan stepped forward instinctively, intending to lead, but Clara intercepted him. "Not yet. We need to test stability and find the safest crossing point. One slip and we all go down." Her voice carried authority born of experience and risk assessment, silencing Ryan's objections. Carefully, she used an ice probe to test depth and consistency, directing Anna and Ryan to follow a specific path that minimized exposure. Eli monitored the procedure, nodding in approval at Clara's methodical approach. As they crossed, Clara's body began to protest more violently. Her vision blurred. A wave of nausea swept over her, and her heartbeat rattled in her chest. "Altitude sickness," she muttered to herself, grimacing as she steadied against the ice. Anna immediately sensed her condition, providing support. "We stopped for a short break. Hydrate and rest," Anna insisted, producing warm water and high-energy snacks. Clara shook her head, but Anna's firm gaze forced compliance. Even Ryan paused, recognizing that pushing forward could endanger everyone. While resting, Clara reflected on her journey. Each challenge thus far had tested not just her physical endurance, but her mental fortitude. She thought of the skepticism she had faced from Ryan, the societal doubts about women in extreme sports, and the personal drive that had propelled her here. Now facing her own physical vulnerability, she realized that proving strength wasn't about conquering fear or denying limitations. It was about confronting them honestly and strategically. Eli approached, offering quiet counsel. "Clara, leadership is about knowing your limits and acting for the team's safety, not just your ambition," he said. His words resonated deeply. For the first time, Clara saw that her desire to prove herself could be harmonized with the mountain's inherent dangers. Strength wasn't merely in her ability to push forward. It was in her judgment, her patience, and her capacity to adapt. Ryan, seated a short distance away, observed the interaction. His pride struggled with acknowledgement, but Clara's competence and measured decision-making left him little room for dismissal. "You're doing well," he admitted quietly. "Better than I expected." Clara met his gaze but said nothing, focusing instead on steadying her breath and preparing for the next phase. Respect, she realized, was emerging not from confrontation, but from action and consistency under pressure. After an hour of rest and acclimation, the team continued. The climb intensified. Steeper inclines, more exposed ridges, and gusting winds that threatened to unbalance even the most experienced climbers. Clara led with renewed focus, carefully placing each step and guiding the team through the perilous terrain. Ryan followed, attentive now rather than impulsive, while Anna maintained a steady, supportive presence. Eli offered occasional insights, subtly steering the group without overt intervention. Midway along a narrow ledge, Clara's strength faltered again. Her legs shook, a result of both fatigue and the persistent effects of altitude. Panic threatened to creep in, a whisper reminding her of every misstep she had ever taken. She gritted her teeth and took a slow, deep breath, recalling the mountain's lessons: patience, foresight, and respect for one's limits. She tested the footing, blunted her ice axe firmly, and advanced cautiously, proving to herself that determination could coexist with prudence. The group soon encountered a small ice fall, a cascading patch of frozen water that barred direct passage. Ryan instinctively wanted to scale it, but Clara suggested a safer route along a nearby snow slope, slightly longer but far more stable. "We can risk shortcuts when conditions are predictable," she reasoned. "Right now, survival outweighs ambition." Ryan hesitated, then followed her lead, his pride suppressed in recognition of her superior judgment. As they navigated the icefall, Clara began experiencing hallucinations, brief flashes of motion at the edge of her vision, distorted perceptions of slope angles, and whispers of doubt. The mountain was testing more than her body. It was probing her mind, her ability to maintain clarity under stress. Anna noticed her moments of disorientation immediately. "Focus on my voice. Follow my pace," she instructed calmly, keeping Clara anchored in reality. Eli positioned himself to monitor their passage, reinforcing both safety and confidence. The cumulative strain culminated near a steep, exposed ridge. Ryan struggled with fatigue, his ego and body both under assault, while Anna's vigilance ensured that minor slips didn't escalate. Clara, though battling her own physical and mental limits, took the lead in securing ropes and guiding each climber. Every step was a negotiation with exhaustion, fear, and the mountain's indifference. Finally, they reached a high-altitude plateau, a temporary reprieve from the vertical challenge. Clara sank onto the snow, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but her eyes shone with fierce satisfaction. She had confronted her personal limits and survived, not unscathed, but wiser and stronger. Ryan beside her nodded silently, an unspoken acknowledgement of the shifting dynamics. Respect had been earned through action, not argument. Eli surveyed the team, satisfaction in his calm eyes. "You've all demonstrated courage and judgment," he said quietly. "The mountain doesn't forgive recklessness, and today we've all acted in its respect." His words carried the weight of experience and validation, cementing the lesson that survival required both humility and strength. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the team set up their high camp, the summit still looming, distant and imposing. Clara reflected on the day's trials. Vulnerability, fear, and exhaustion had all tested her, but she had emerged with clarity about leadership, strategy, and perseverance. The mountain had stripped away pretense, leaving only the raw truth of capability and judgment. That night, as snow swirled around their tents and wind rattled against fabric, Clara lay awake, contemplating the challenges ahead. The climb had shifted from a personal mission of proving herself to a profound journey of understanding strength, physical, mental, and moral. She thought of Ryan, Anna, and Eli, each contributing in their way to a collective effort, and understood that true leadership involved collaboration, trust, and the courage to confront both external and internal obstacles. Tomorrow would bring higher altitudes, harsher conditions, and decisions that could mean life or death. But Clara, tempered by self-doubt and reinforced by experience, felt a deep sense of resolve. She had faced her personal limits and learned that strength was as much about knowing when to act as it was about the power to do so. And as she drifted into a restless sleep, the mountain above whispered its silent challenge. There were still lessons to be learned, and Clara was ready to meet them head-on. Marcus's hand tightened around the rope, his knuckles white against the icy grip. Just moments ago, Ryan had insisted on a shortcut up a precarious ridge, dismissing Clara's carefully laid plan. Now, the consequences of his arrogance were beginning to show. Snow shifted beneath their feet, the thin crust giving way to hidden crevices. A small rock slide cascaded down the slope, startling the team and sending a spray of ice into the wind. Clara's heart leapt. The mountain was unforgiving, and Ryan's reckless decision had turned a manageable path into a potential death trap. "Hold steady," Clara called, her voice carrying authority that left no room for dissent. Anna moved instantly to her side, anchoring her ice axe and stabilizing her footing. Eli's calm, commanding presence reinforced the urgency. "Ryan, stop moving forward! You're endangering all of us!" He shouted over the roar of wind and shifting snow. Ryan froze mid-step, his chest heaving, eyes wide as the gravity of the situation hit him. "It's fine," he muttered, though his usual arrogance cracked under the pressure. "We can handle this." Clara glared at him, her eyes sharp. "No, we cannot. You're ignoring the risks. Every decision matters here. One miscalculation, one moment of pride, and we could all fall." The ridge was narrow, barely enough space for two climbers to pass safely. Snow and loose rock littered the surface, each step a careful negotiation between balance and trust. Clara took the lead, moving deliberately, testing each anchor point and selecting the safest route. Anna and Eli followed, guiding Ryan when necessary, their combined experience creating a protective corridor. The tension in the air was palpable. Every breath seemed heavier, the altitude pressing down not just on their lungs, but on their nerves. Halfway along the ridge, the inevitable happened. A loose slab of rock gave way beneath Ryan's foot, sending him sliding a few feet toward the edge. Clara reacted instantly, dropping to a secure crouch and reaching for the rope. "Grab the line!" she shouted. Ryan yanked at the rope, panic flashing across his face, while Anna and Eli stabilized themselves and reinforced the anchor points. In a fluid motion born of practice and trust, Clara managed to arrest his fall, yanking him back onto the safer part of the ridge. The team paused, catching their breath. Ryan sat heavily, chest heaving, the color drained from his face. For the first time, the veneer of infallibility cracked. I thought I could handle it," he stammered, shame and adrenaline mingling in his voice. Clara didn't answer immediately. She didn't need to. The look in her eyes communicated both frustration and an unspoken lesson. Leadership was not about ego. It was about responsibility. Eli stepped forward, his calm tone slicing through the tension. "Ryan, the mountain doesn't care about pride. Every choice carries consequences. You've seen what happens when you ignore experience. Let's move forward together, not against each other." Ryan nodded slowly, swallowing hard, the weight of humility settling over him like a heavy blanket. Clara resumed the lead, her movements deliberate, testing every foothold before committing weight. Anna stayed close, providing guidance and reassurance, while Ryan, chastened but attentive, followed her instructions carefully. Eli oversaw the passage, correcting mistakes silently and allowing Clara's authority to solidify in practice rather than words. The team's dynamic had shifted. Respect was being forged in the crucible of danger. The ridge soon transitioned into a near vertical ice face. The wind whipped relentlessly, stealing warmth and making each movement a battle. Clara secured the ropes with meticulous care, double-checking anchors and calculating angles of ascent. Ryan moved slower now, muscles taut with the effort of control, while Anna and Eli maintained a rhythm that allowed each member to ascend safely. A sudden gust sent a spray of ice crystals across Clara's vision. She froze for a heartbeat, listening to the mountain's subtle cues, the creaking of snow, the whisper of wind, the shifting of rock. "Stay close," she instructed, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. One misstep could cascade into disaster. "Trust the anchors, trust your footing, trust me." Ryan's hands shook as he gripped the rope, his pride battling his fear. I didn't realize," he admitted quietly, the first hint of vulnerability he had shown. Clara's jaw softened slightly, recognizing the breakthrough. Leadership wasn't about crushing ego. It was about teaching through action and example. Midway up the ice face, a minor rockslide erupted from above, triggered by the shift of their climbing. Clara instinctively shielded herself and Anna while shouting warnings. Eli moved swiftly, redirecting Ryan's attention and guiding him to a safer path. The avalanche was minor, but it served as a stark reminder of the mountain's power. No mistake, no matter how small, could be ignored. Once past the immediate danger, the team found a narrow ledge to rest. Clara slumped briefly, her energy sapped by the altitude and the physical exertion. Anna immediately offered support, passing her water and encouraging a moment of recovery. "You're doing amazing," Anna said softly. "We wouldn't have made it this far without your leadership." Clara's lips pressed into a thin line, absorbing the compliment with quiet pride. Ryan, seated a few feet away, looked at her with a mixture of awe and humility. I misjudged you," he said slowly. "I thought leadership was about confidence and speed. I didn't see it was about judgment and responsibility." Clara met his gaze, but said nothing, letting the mountain, the climb, and the shared near disaster convey the lesson more effectively than words ever could. The final section of the ridge loomed above them, a daunting stretch of exposed ice and rock, with sheer drops on either side. Clara's mind was clear, her senses heightened. Every move required calculation, every instruction precise. Anna maintained a steady presence, ready to intervene, while Eli silently observed, prepared to correct or assist without undermining Clara's authority. Ryan followed, now fully attentive, a student humbled by experience and respect. As they ascended, the snow deepened, the wind gusting in unpredictable patterns. Clara's endurance was tested at the limits, her muscles screaming with effort. Yet each careful step reinforced her leadership. Each successful navigation of peril instilled confidence not just in herself, but in the team. Ryan's respect was no longer grudging. It was earned through observation and shared struggle. At the top of the ridge, they paused, surveying the path ahead. The summit still beckoned, distant and imposing, yet tangible for the first time. Clara felt a surge of both relief and determination. Today, she had faced not just the mountain, but the human element of danger and ego. Ryan had been challenged, humbled, and transformed. The team's cohesion, forged in adversity, was stronger than ever. Eli broke the silence. "You've all proven something today," he said, voice calm but firm. "The mountain test, skill, courage, and judgment. You've all passed, and you've done so together. Remember this. The summit is still ahead, but you've already learned one of the most important lessons of the climb. Trust. Respect and careful leadership matter more than pride or speed." Clara nodded, exhausted but resolute. Her mind replayed the day's events, the near disaster on the ridge, the struggle to balance ambition with safety, the transformation in Ryan, the unwavering support of Anna, and the guiding presence of Eli. Each moment had tested her personally, physically and morally, revealing that true strength was a combination of courage, wisdom, and humility. As they set up camp for the night, wind howling around the tents, Clara reflected on the trials of the day. The mountain had demanded respect and precision, and in return it had taught lessons that no summit could impart alone. Tomorrow would bring higher altitudes, more extreme conditions, and fresh ethical dilemmas, but Clara was ready. She had emerged as a decisive leader, capable of guiding her team through peril while maintaining their trust and safety. Sleep came fitfully, each creak of the tent and howl of wind a reminder of the mountain's dominance. Clara lay awake, muscles sore, mind alert, replaying every decision and recalibrating strategies for the next day. Ryan, beside her, seemed quieter now, introspective rather than boastful. Anna slept lightly, always alert to the team's needs. Eli, seasoned and calm, monitored the weather, prepared to intervene when necessary, but trusting Clara's judgment. The night passed, relentless and cold. By dawn, the mountain would test them anew. But for the first time, Clara felt a profound sense of command over not just the climb, but over herself and the collective will of her team. Today's trials had transformed conflict into understanding, ego into respect, and recklessness into disciplined courage. The path to the summit was still fraught with danger, yet she had proven that leadership under pressure was her true strength. As she closed her eyes for a final rest, she whispered to herself, "We're ready. Whatever comes next, we face it together." And somewhere above, the wind carried the mountain's silent acknowledgement. The climb was far from over, but Clara and her team had proven themselves worthy challengers, capable of rising above not just the slopes, but the human failings that often endanger the best of intentions. The sun barely crested the jagged horizon of Mount Elbert as Clara tightened her harness, her breath misting in the thin, frigid air. The ridge they had conquered the previous day lay far below, a stark reminder of the danger they had survived. Today, the final push to the summit awaited, a stretch of mountain that would test their endurance, skill, and willpower more than any prior trial. The wind gusted viciously, rattling equipment and chilling exposed skin. Clara glanced at her team, Anna adjusting her crampons, Ryan checking his ropes with a newfound respect for precision, and Eli scanning the route ahead with his usual calm assessment. Clara inhaled deeply, the cold air burning her lungs, and whispered a silent vow. This is it. One step at a time, together. She led the team forward, deliberately choosing a route that balanced challenge with safety. The snow here was deeper, the ice slicker and the air thinner, each breath a reminder of the mountain's unforgiving nature. Every movement demanded full attention. One miscalculation could cascade into disaster. The first critical section was a near-vertical ice face, glinting sharply in the weak sunlight. Clara tested each anchor point before committing her weight, her fingers numb from the cold, despite her insulated gloves. Anna followed closely, offering guidance and encouragement, while Ryan trailed silent and focused, clearly internalizing the lessons of the previous day. Eli remained slightly behind, his experienced eyes scanning for hidden hazards and monitoring the team's physical state. As they climbed, Clara's mind wandered briefly to the journey that had brought them here. She thought of her mother's words, "The mountain tests more than your body. It tests your heart." Every obstacle, every gust of wind, every precarious step forced her to confront fear, pride, and responsibility. Today was not just about reaching the summit. It was about embodying the strength she had cultivated over a lifetime. A combination of skill, courage, and moral clarity. Halfway up the ice face, a sudden crack echoed through the mountain. Clara froze, heart hammering. The ice beneath a nearby outcrop had fractured, sending a cascade of shards tumbling past them. "Move carefully," she instructed, her voice calm but authoritative. "Stay alert. Watch every step." The team adjusted immediately, relying on each other to navigate the hazardous zone. Anna's cautious vigilance prevented Ryan from stepping onto a loose patch, while Eli provided support and guidance. "Clara," Ryan called, his voice tight with concentration, "Thank you for catching that. I wouldn't have seen it." Clara offered a brief nod, her focus never leaving the path ahead. Respect had shifted between them. His acknowledgement, though small, symbolized his growth from arrogance to awareness. Leadership, she realized, wasn't about ego. It was about foresight, decisiveness, and empathy. As they pressed higher, the wind intensified, howling across the mountain with a force that threatened to knock them off balance. Each movement was deliberate, each placement of an ice axe or crampon calculated for stability. Clara's muscles burned, her fingers and toes numb, yet she moved with a precision born of experience and determination. Anna's laughter broke through the tension occasionally, light-hearted but steady, reminding the group of humanity amidst the peril. The route narrowed, transforming into an exposed ridge with sheer drops on both sides. The mountain demanded complete focus. Clara led, rope secured, moving with a rhythm that balanced caution and efficiency. Ryan followed, trusting her judgment fully now, his previous pride replaced with attentiveness and collaboration. Eli remained vigilant, ready to intervene, but confident in Clara's command. Anna provided constant encouragement, highlighting dangers and maintaining morale. Midway along the ridge, a sudden squall descended, whipping snow and ice into a blinding storm. Visibility dropped to mere feet. Clara quickly signaled the team to secure themselves to anchors, the wind threatening to uproot them from precarious footholds. Communication became difficult, voices lost in the roar. Each member relied on the rope's tension and subtle movements to gauge proximity and stability. "This is why we prepare," Clara shouted against the wind. "Check every anchor. Don't move without confirmation." The team responded, methodically inspecting ropes and ice screws, ensuring each step was safe before proceeding. The storm was a brutal reminder of the mountain's unpredictability and the necessity of teamwork under pressure. Hours passed, the climb exhausting both body and mind. Clara felt the altitude pressing against her, each breath shallow and laborious. Yet with every careful step they advanced, driven by determination and mutual trust. Ryan's movements had become steady and precise, reflecting his evolution from a brash leader to a disciplined partner. Anna's humor and support maintained morale, while Eli's quiet observation ensured that safety remained paramount. As they neared the final stretch, the summit loomed above, shrouded in clouds. The slope steepened, ice slick and unyielding. Clara paused, assessing the approach. She noticed subtle hazards, hidden crevices and unstable ice patches. "We take this slow," she instructed. "Every step matters. No shortcuts." Ryan nodded, fully trusting her judgment. Anna and Eli readied themselves, their respect for Clara's leadership clear in their focused expressions. The final pitch required a combination of technical skill and strategic thinking. Clara anchored herself first, testing the ice, then called the team up sequentially. Ryan moved with deliberate care, his confidence in Clara evident. Anna followed, moving smoothly despite fatigue, her trust in Clara unwavering. Eli ensured that all safety protocols were maintained, reinforcing the team's cohesion. Halfway up the pitch, Clara paused, looking back at the path they had traversed. The ridge, the ice face, the narrow ledges, they had overcome every challenge thrown at them. She allowed herself a brief sense of pride, tempered by awareness of the remaining danger. The summit was near, but the mountain demanded respect until the final step. A sudden gust nearly toppled Ryan, and Clara reacted instantly, bracing him and steadying the rope. "Focus," she said firmly. "One step at a time. We finish this together." The moment underscored the importance of vigilance, cooperation, and clear leadership. Ryan's trust was absolute now, no longer born of ego but of earned respect. Finally, after relentless effort, the summit ridge revealed itself. The snow thinned, and the jagged peak rose above them, bathed in pale sunlight. The team paused briefly, taking in the sight. Clara's heart swelled, not just at the physical achievement, but at the journey, the growth, the trust forged under extreme conditions. She looked at Ryan, Anna, and Eli, each reflecting exhaustion, relief, and awe. "This is it," she whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. "We make the final push together." They approached the summit carefully, every step deliberate. The wind roared, snow swirled, and the altitude pressed against them, yet their teamwork and preparation carried them forward. At last, Clara stepped onto the summit. She turned to the others, Ryan standing beside her, now fully present as a partner, Anna smiling through fatigue, Eli calm and proud. The vast expanse of Colorado stretched out below them, a sea of mountains, forests, and rivers. For a moment, the trials, the fear, the conflict all melted away. What remained was triumph, respect, and shared accomplishment. Clara raised her hand, gripping the ice axe like a banner. "We did it. All of us, together." Ryan exhaled, a mixture of relief and admiration in his expression. "You led us well," he admitted quietly, the acknowledgement of her strength and leadership complete. Anna's laughter carried on the wind, and Eli offered a rare, broad smile. The summit was not just a physical location, it was a testament to the evolution of leadership, trust, and perseverance. The mountain had tested them in every way, physically, morally, emotionally. Every decision, every step, every act of care and courage had brought them here. Clara's transformation from determined individual to respected leader was evident, as was the team's growth as they stood together, wind biting at their faces. Clara reflected on the lessons of the climb. Courage was meaningless without wisdom. Strength without empathy was hollow, and achievement was most profound when shared. The mountain had demanded their best, and they had risen to the challenge, not as individuals, but as a cohesive unit. Clara took a deep breath, letting the cold air fill her lungs. The summit was a moment of culmination, yes, but also a threshold. They had proven themselves capable, but the descent awaited, a challenge equally demanding of patience, skill, and moral judgment. For now, though, the victory was theirs. The climb had reshaped them, forged bonds of trust and respect, and redefined what it meant to lead. As the team prepared to set up a brief rest at the summit, Clara allowed herself a fleeting smile. The mountain had tested them, and they had emerged not just alive, but stronger, wiser, and more united. The summit push was complete, but the story of resilience, courage, and leadership was far from over. Tomorrow would bring new trials on the descent, yet for tonight, atop Mount Elbert, they savored a hard-earned triumph, the culmination of skill, trust, and the indomitable human spirit. The wind at the summit of Mount Elbert was relentless, a biting reminder that they were at the highest point in Colorado. Clara tightened her jacket and adjusted her gloves, letting the cold sting her fingers as she surveyed the horizon. Snowfields stretched endlessly, sunlight bouncing off jagged peaks far below. For a fleeting moment, all the exhaustion, fear, and doubt melted away, leaving only the thrill of achievement. Yet this moment of triumph was also a crucible for reflection, a time to confront personal truths and unspoken tensions. Clara turned to her team. Ryan stood a few paces behind, his usual confident smirk replaced by a quiet, contemplative expression. Anna crouched to check on their equipment, her eyes sparkling despite the fatigue. Eli leaned on his ice axe, scanning the panorama, a gentle smile breaking across his face. Clara's chest swelled with pride, not just for reaching the summit, but for the journey that had forged them into a cohesive, resilient team. She broke the silence. We did it. Every step, every challenge, every decision, it brought us here together. Her voice carried over the gusting wind, firm yet imbued with the warmth of shared accomplishment. Ryan approached, hesitating slightly, as if weighing his words. Clara, you led us well. He paused, swallowing his pride. I underestimated you, not just as a climber, but as a leader. Clara allowed herself a small smile. This was more than acknowledgement. It was a reconciliation of egos, a recognition of growth under the harshest conditions. Ryan's eyes met hers, not with competition, but with respect. The transformation in him was subtle, yet profound, a mirror of her own evolution from determined individual to respected leader. Anna stood and clapped a hand on Clara's shoulder. You kept us alive, she said with her characteristic humor, a light-hearted contrast to the intense climb. And you did it with style. Clara chuckled softly, the sound carried away by the wind, but she didn't mind. Anna's humor had been a lifeline throughout the climb, balancing tension with levity, reminding everyone that courage was not devoid of joy. Eli stepped forward, his voice carrying the calm authority he had displayed throughout the climb. Mount Elbert tests every climber in a way few mountains do, he said, gesturing to the panoramic expanse. It challenges physical skill, decision-making, and integrity. Today, all of you demonstrated not just competence, but character. Clara, your leadership was exemplary. Ryan, your willingness to learn and adapt shows growth that will serve you well in future climbs. Anna, your support and insight were invaluable. Each of you has been tested, and each has risen. The team absorbed his words, the weight of the mountain's judgment settling upon them. For Clara, the summit was more than a goal achieved. It was a mirror reflecting every struggle, every fear, every triumph of the climb. She thought of her mother's words from childhood. The mountain tests more than your body. It tests your heart. Every step, every decision, every moment of doubt and courage had culminated here. She had proven her skill, yes, but more importantly, she had proven that strength could be measured in resilience, empathy, and leadership, not just raw physical ability. Clara turned to Ryan. This isn't just about proving something to others, she said quietly, the wind slicing her words across the summit. It's about understanding what it means to lead, to protect, and to inspire. You've learned that in your own way. Ryan nodded, a mixture of humility and relief on his face. The arrogance that had defined him in Denver had been stripped away. replaced with the awareness that true leadership required listening. Adapting and trusting others, Anna took out her camera. Capturing the snow-blown summit, the team framed against the vast Colorado sky. "We'll remember this," she said softly. "Not just the climb, but what it took to get here." Clara watched her friend, appreciating the way Anna's grounded perspective had balanced her own intensity. Without Anna, the climb might have been reckless. With her, it became disciplined courage guided by empathy. Eli moved closer, glancing at the group with a mixture of pride and serenity. "This mountain will always demand respect," he said. "It will always push climbers to their limits. But today, you've shown that preparation, courage, and mutual respect can meet any challenge." His eyes lingered on Clara, an unspoken acknowledgement of her leadership. She felt the weight of his approval, knowing it was earned, not given. As they rested briefly, a silence fell over the team, a contemplative pause, filled not with words but with shared understanding. The climb had been grueling. Storms, avalanches, narrow ridges, and moral dilemmas. Every trial had been a crucible, refining not just their climbing skills, but their character. Clara thought about the moments when fear had threatened to overwhelm her. The ice face that could have been fatal, the narrow ledges where one misstep meant disaster, the moments when ego and pride clashed with the imperative of survival. Each had been a test, and each had been passed. Clara's thoughts turned inward. She reflected on her journey. Growing up in Denver with a single mother, exploring the nearby mountains, absorbing lessons about courage, persistence, and empathy. She thought about the skepticism she had faced from Ryan and others who doubted a woman's ability to lead in extreme mountaineering. That skepticism had fueled her determination, yes, but it had also been a distraction, a lens that she no longer needed. Today was not about proving them wrong, it was about proving herself right. She was capable, competent, and deserving of leadership. Ryan broke her reverie. "Clara, I need to be honest," he said. "I judged you too quickly. Your skill, your judgment, your ability to lead under pressure. I underestimated every part of it. I've learned more than I expected on this climb." Clara nodded, sensing the sincerity in his tone. Their rivalry had transformed into mutual respect, a testament to the mountain's ability to challenge not just bodies, but egos. Anna joined in, smiling warmly. "And don't forget, Clara, you kept your cool when things went sideways. You didn't just climb the mountain, you carried us with you. That's leadership." Clara felt a surge of gratitude for Anna's unwavering support, recognizing that true leaders lift those around them rather than simply pushing forward alone. Eli's gaze swept the horizon again. "Look at what you've accomplished together. Mountains like this don't just test physical skill, they test patience, judgment, and the heart. Today, each of you has risen to that test. Remember this feeling, carry it forward. It will guide you through future challenges, both on mountains and in life." The team took a moment to honor climbers who had attempted Mount Elbert before them but never returned. Clara reflected on the fragility of life and the importance of preparation, humility, and respect for nature. She felt a deep connection to every mountaineer who had faced this peak, their triumphs and tragedies intertwined with her own experience. As the wind began to calm slightly, Clara addressed the group. "We've reached the summit, yes. But the climb isn't over. We have to descend safely. That requires the same focus, the same care, the same teamwork. Let's carry what we've learned here down the mountain intact." Each team member nodded, understanding that the lessons of leadership, trust, and resilience would guide their descent as much as their ascent. The descent promised new challenges, exhaustion, unpredictable terrain, and the ever-present danger of the mountain. Yet Clara felt a renewed sense of confidence. She had faced fear, adversity, and doubt, both within herself and from others. She had led a team through life-threatening conditions, earning respect not through dominance, but through skill, empathy, and courage. The summit had been a revelation, not merely a physical achievement, but a profound personal and collective transformation. As they began to prepare for the initial descent, Clara felt the weight of her journey settle comfortably on her shoulders. The mountain had tested her, and she had risen. Ryan, once a skeptic, now moved with a combination of respect and trust. Anna remained the steady, supportive presence she had always been. Eli's quiet wisdom provided balance and perspective. Together, they were no longer just a group of climbers. They were a team forged in adversity, capable of facing whatever challenges the mountain and life would throw at them next. Clara allowed herself one last glance at the summit, the sun glinting off the snow in dazzling brilliance. This moment, this view, this achievement, it was hers and theirs, a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of trust and leadership. As they descended toward the safety of lower elevations, Clara carried with her not only the physical accomplishment, but a renewed understanding of strength. It is measured not just in muscle or endurance, but in the integrity of one's choices, the courage to lead with empathy, and the resilience to rise after every challenge. For Clara Thompson, the summit was a beginning as much as an end, a place of revelation, reflection, and growth. It was a testament to human potential, the triumph of preparation, trust, and leadership, and the enduring lesson that the greatest victories are those that elevate not just the self, but all who journey together. The wind atop Mount Elbert had softened to a persistent gust, cold but no longer cutting. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the thin air fill her lungs, and glanced at her team. The summit behind them glowed faintly in the early afternoon sun, a distant triumph now eclipsed by the task ahead. Descending the mountain would be a test just as intense, if not more so. Fatigue gnawed at their muscles, mental exhaustion dulled judgment, and the mountains unpredictable. Temperament threatened to undo even their meticulous planning. Clara adjusted her gloves and checked her ropes and harness one last time before leading the group down the ridge. The snow beneath her boots shifted as she took careful steps, each one measured, deliberate. She could feel the pull of gravity more acutely on tired legs, every joint aching from hours of climbing and wind exposure. Ryan followed closely, his face tight with concentration. Gone was the arrogance that had greeted her in Denver. It had been replaced with quiet, reflective focus. Anna walked 2 steps behind him, scanning the terrain with her usual caution, and Eli brought up the rear, his experienced eyes catching every subtle shift in the snow and ice that could signal danger. The first challenge of the descent appeared within minutes, a narrow, wind-blasted ledge that clung to the mountainside like a stubborn vein of rock. One misstep here could mean disaster. Clara halted the group, motioning for them to anchor and clip into the safety line. Her hands worked efficiently, but her mind raced through scenarios: loose snow, ice patches, sudden gusts. "Stay close. Maintain 3 points of contact at all times," she instructed, her voice steady despite the tension tightening her chest. Ryan complied without hesitation, a small but significant sign of his trust in her leadership. Anna tightened her grip on her ice axe, and Eli murmured affirmations under his breath, scanning for instability. The descent along the ledge was slow, each footstep deliberate. Clara's muscles trembled under the strain, yet she refused to rush. She knew that impatience could cost them dearly. As they moved, she glanced at Ryan, noticing the subtle shift in his posture, the way he leaned slightly toward her commands rather than resisting. This silent acknowledgement of her authority felt like a small victory in itself, a culmination of months of tension and rivalry. The mountain had forced a transformation not only in her, but in him. Halfway across the ledge, a sudden crack echoed through the valley, a minor avalanche triggered on a distant slope, but enough to remind them that nature was indifferent to human effort. Clara froze, her ears straining against the wind. "Everyone stop," she commanded. The team paused, bodies tense. Snow tumbled down, harmlessly distant, yet it was a stark reminder of the mountain's constant volatility. Ryan exhaled, a hint of anxiety betraying the calm he had tried to maintain. Clara offered him a brief nod, silently communicating that fear was natural but must not control action. Anna, sensing the tension, whispered, "We've got this. Just keep moving smart." After what felt like an eternity, they reached a wider snowfield where the terrain allowed a steadier pace. Clara motioned for a brief rest. They huddled behind a rock outcrop, shoulders hunched against the wind, their breaths misting in the thin air. Fatigue was visible on everyone's face. Ryan wiped a smear of sweat and snow from his brow, finally allowing a small, genuine smile. "You've got a steady hand, Clara. I never doubted your skill, just everything else." His words were heavy with humility. Clara offered a brief smile, the faintest hint of satisfaction warming her despite the cold. "It's not skill alone," she replied. "It's judgment, patience, and the willingness to keep learning. You've learned that too." He nodded, the unspoken bond of shared adversity solidifying between them. They pressed on, the snow giving way to rocky terrain that required careful navigation. Clara led, plotting a course around unstable scree slopes and jagged outcrops. Anna's sharp eyes caught subtle signs of potential rockfalls, and her quick warnings prevented several missteps. Eli's guidance became more pronounced, advising on rope placement and angle selection, but he deferred decision-making to Clara, allowing her to maintain the leadership mantle she had earned. Even the silent presence of the mountain seemed less oppressive now, a challenge to respect rather than a threat to conquer. Yet even as they descended, the mountain tested them in new ways. Fatigue had left minor mistakes inevitable. Ryan slipped slightly on loose gravel, his foot sliding dangerously near a small drop. Clara's hand shot out, gripping his arm with force and stability. "Careful! Watch your footing!" she warned. Ryan inhaled sharply, embarrassment coloring his face. But he recovered quickly, a subtle acknowledgement of both his vulnerability and her quick reflexes. Enna whispered a soft, teasing remark about Ryan's humility, and he responded with a sheepish chuckle. Even in danger, humor lightened the strain, creating camaraderie born of shared experience. As they navigated a particularly treacherous stretch, Eli called for a halt. "There's an unstable ice patch ahead," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We need to secure anchors and take extra precautions." Clara agreed, signaling the team to prepare ropes and harnesses. The process was slow, painstaking, yet essential. Each anchor, each carabiner, each careful step reinforced the lesson that caution could coexist with courage, and that leadership required both decisiveness and patience. Hours passed as they continued their descent. The mountain, though less aggressive than during the ascent, still demanded vigilance. Their pace slowed, exhaustion creeping into even the most practiced movements. Clara noticed that Ryan occasionally glanced at her, not for orders, but for reassurance, a sign of trust that had not existed earlier in their journey. Anna's humor remained a grounding force, lightening the tension, while Eli's quiet watchfulness ensured that every decision balanced risk with safety. As the sun dipped lower, the shadows lengthened across the slopes. Clara led the team to a sheltered outcrop for the night, a narrow plateau shielded from wind. They pitched a temporary tent, shared a sparse meal, and took a moment to reflect on the day's trials. Ryan, usually reserved in personal conversation, spoke first. "I never realized how much of this is mental, not just physical. I've been so focused on pride and reputation, I forgot what it means to truly work as part of a team." Clara listened, appreciating the honesty. "The mountain teaches in ways ego can't comprehend," she replied. "We succeed together or we fail alone. Remember that." Anna nodded in agreement. "And you're learning it well, Ryan. That counts for more than you think." Ryan offered a small smile, a mix of humility and gratitude. Even fatigue could not mask the subtle change in his demeanor. A man who had begun the climb as an arrogant skeptic, now transformed by experience and insight. The night was long, the air cold, but sleep was necessary. Clara lay awake in her sleeping bag, reflecting on the journey from Denver to the summit, and now this final stretch down. Every moment had tested her, physically, mentally, and morally. She had confronted her doubts, societal bias, and the harsh reality of nature. She had guided, protected, and inspired. She had learned that true strength was measured not only by endurance, but by empathy, judgment, and the courage to embrace vulnerability. The next morning, The descent resumed. Snow gave way to dirt paths and pine-strewn slopes. Minor injuries and sore muscles were evident, but the team moved with a rhythm forged in shared adversity. Ryan occasionally assisted Anna across difficult patches, and she returned the favor, reinforcing the mutual trust that had grown organically. Eli offered subtle guidance, reminding them of safer pathways, but it was Clara's judgment that dictated their movement, a fact none questioned. By midday, the base of the mountain appeared in the distance. The landscape familiar, yet transformed in her eyes, colored by the lessons and trials of the climb. Clara felt a sense of accomplishment tempered by reflection. Each scar, each moment of fear, each decision weighed heavily in her mind, not as regret, but as evidence of growth. She knew that the mountain would remain unyielding and majestic, but the lessons it imparted would guide her beyond its slopes, into every future challenge she might face. As they reached the foot of Mount Elbert, Captain James Walker's voice came over the radio, tinged with cautious approval. "Clara, you and your team navigated difficult terrain safely. Impressive work. Report in when you reach the base camp." Clara acknowledged him, her pride tempered by humility. The mountain had tested them, and they had emerged intact, wiser and stronger, physically and emotionally. Gathered at the base camp, the team shared quiet laughter and exchanges of admiration. Anna adjusted her gear and grinned at Clara. "You did it, every step of the way." Ryan, now fully reconciled to her leadership, nodded and extended a hand. "I respect you, Clara. Truly, you've earned it." She shook it firmly, a bond forged in adversity, sealed by mutual respect. Eli stood slightly apart, a quiet smile of approval. His role as guide and mentor complete, the descent was more than a return from the mountain. It was a return changed, transformed by the trials faced and the lessons learned. Clara's leadership had been tested under extreme conditions, her strength measured not by physical prowess alone, but by resilience, judgment, and empathy. Ryan had shed arrogance for humility. Anna had demonstrated unwavering loyalty and practicality. Eli had provided wisdom and guidance, ensuring the team's cohesion and survival. As the sun began to set over the Colorado peaks, Clara looked back at Mount Elbert, its summit hidden in the fading light. She felt a profound connection to the mountain, to the journey, and to the team that had shared the challenge. Every step of the descent had reinforced the truth she now fully understood. The climb is never just about reaching the top. It's about who you become along the way, the bonds you forge, and the courage to rise above fear, bias, and doubt. Mount Elbert remained silent and majestic, but Clara and her team had left an indelible mark, not on the mountain itself, but on themselves. The descent was complete, but its lessons, consequences, and memories would remain, guiding their future climbs and shaping the way they approached every challenge ahead. The air in Denver felt almost surreal to Clara Thompson as she stepped off the chartered van and onto the familiar streets of her hometown. The city had not changed much. Denver's skyline, framed by the distant Rockies, gleamed under the late afternoon sun. But to her, everything seemed different. She had returned not simply as the climber who had conquered Mount Elbert, but as someone transformed by the mountain's trials. Every ache in her muscles, every pang of altitude-induced fatigue, every moral choice made along the ascent and descent had accumulated into a profound personal growth she could feel coursing through her body and mind. The expedition had garnered attention, of course. Clara's determination had been noticed by local news outlets, mountaineering magazines, and even national broadcasters. She had been invited to speak at a press conference, scheduled for the evening, a platform where she could not only recount the physical aspects of the climb, but also highlight the emotional and social lessons it carried. Yet as she walked alongside Anna, Ryan, and Eli toward the venue, Clara's mind was restless. Her thoughts swirled between pride, exhaustion, and the inevitable reflection that came with such monumental achievement. Anna noticed her introspection and nudged her gently. "Hey, Earth to Clara! You're staring off like the mountain's still calling your name." Her teasing smile was both comforting and grounding. Clara chuckled softly, shaking her head. "I guess part of me still hears it. I keep thinking about every step, every decision. It feels like I've left a piece of myself up there." Anna nodded, her gaze softening. "That's how it should be. You earned every one of those steps. And now you get to bring it all back home." Ryan walked beside them in near silence, the crisp Denver air highlighting the changes in him as clearly as any visible scar. The arrogance that had colored his interactions at the start of the expedition had given way to a tempered humility. He had learned, through countless near disasters and moments of vulnerability, that leadership was not about proving dominance or showcasing skill alone. Clara had forced him to confront his ego, and he had emerged a more thoughtful, empathetic leader. Glancing at her, he offered a quiet acknowledgement. "You really did it. Clara, not just the climb, the way you handled everything." Clara met his eyes briefly, noting the sincerity that had finally replaced the old smugness. "Thanks, Ryan. It's been a long road for all of us." Eli brought up the rear, carrying a quiet calm that had accompanied him through every difficult section of Mount Elbert. His experience had guided the team through risk assessment, strategy, and emotional support, and though his role had always been understated, it had been critical to the expedition's success. "You all learned a lot up there," he said in his measured tone. "Not just about climbing, but about yourselves. That's the real summit." Clara smiled, recognizing the truth in his words. Eli's mentorship had not been about control, but about guidance, allowing them to step fully into their own leadership and responsibility. The press conference venue buzzed with quiet excitement as Clara and the team arrived. Reporters, cameras, and microphones awaited, each eager to capture the story of a historic climb. The room smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood, a stark contrast to the crisp, thin air of Mount Elbert. Clara adjusted her jacket, feeling the weight of public expectations settle onto her shoulders. She inhaled slowly, centering herself. "Remember," she told herself, "this isn't about ego. It's about sharing what we've learned." As she stepped to the podium, the room fell into a hush. Clara's heart pounded with anticipation, not fear, but the awareness of responsibility. She began speaking, recounting the journey from Denver to the summit and back. She described the physical challenges, treacherous ledges, sudden storms, altitude-induced fatigue. She described the teamwork required to navigate these dangers. Ryan learning to temper his ego, Anna providing support, Eli offering guidance without overshadowing. And she spoke candidly about the emotional journey, the moments of self-doubt, the triumphs, the moral choices, and the deep reflections on leadership and strength. "You see," she concluded, her voice steady and resonant, "Mount Elbert is more than a peak to be conquered. It is a mirror. It reflects not only your physical limits, but your character, your patience, and your courage. The climb isn't about proving yourself to anyone else. It's about discovering who you truly are when challenged, and what kind of leader, teammate, and human being you can become." The room erupted into applause, but Clara barely noticed the noise. Her focus was inward, reflecting on the transformation that had begun months ago in the Denver climbing gym and had culminated high above the clouds. Following her speech, Clara moved to the side to answer questions from reporters. One journalist asked directly, "Clara, do you feel you've changed the perception of women in mountaineering?" Clara paused, considering. "I hope so," she replied thoughtfully. "But this isn't about one person changing perceptions. It's about showing that strength, resilience, and leadership aren't bound by gender. The mountain tests anyone who attempts it, and those who rise to the challenge deserve respect, regardless of who they are." Ryan joined her, fielding questions about teamwork and leadership from a male perspective. He spoke candidly about his own transformation, acknowledging the biases he had held and the lessons he had learned from Clara's example. "I thought I knew what leadership was," he admitted, "but I realized that real leadership is about listening, observing, and empowering others. Clara showed me that strength comes in many forms, and that true success is measured not by ego, but by shared triumphs and mutual respect. Anna, meanwhile, shared anecdotes highlighting teamwork, loyalty and support. Her humor and grounded perspective drew laughter and warmth from the room, balancing the technical and emotional gravity of Clara's narrative. Eli, calm and collected, emphasized the importance of experience and mentorship. He highlighted how guiding others, observing subtle risks, and allowing space for leadership to emerge organically had contributed to both safety and success. As the press conference wound down, Clara felt a deep sense of closure, yet also anticipation. She had shared the lessons of Mount Elbert with the world, but more importantly, she had internalized them. The mountain had taught her to navigate fear and doubt, to assert herself under pressure, and to embrace both vulnerability and resilience. She had learned that true strength was not measured by a summit alone, but by the ability to uplift others and to make ethical, calculated decisions under stress. The team's journey continued outside the conference room as they were greeted by friends, family, and fellow climbers. Messages of congratulations and admiration flowed, but the most meaningful acknowledgement came from those who understood the journey's depth, the people who had trained, guided, and supported her. Anna hugged her tightly. "I knew you could do it," she said softly. Clara hugged her back, feeling the warmth of enduring friendship. Ryan extended his hand once more. "Thank you for challenging me, for leading us, for showing all of us what real strength looks like." Clara shook it firmly, acknowledging the depth of their shared experience. In the following days, the story of the climb spread, inspiring other climbers and challenging societal expectations. Clara began receiving letters and messages from young women eager to pursue climbing and other challenging endeavors. She responded to each thoughtfully, emphasizing resilience, preparation, and the importance of mutual respect. She encouraged them not to focus on the doubts of others, but on cultivating skill, knowledge, and integrity. Back in her apartment, Clara reflected on the mountain from the window overlooking Denver's skyline. The city seemed both ordinary and extraordinary, familiar yet imbued with new meaning. Mount Elbert loomed in memory, its jagged peaks etched into her mind like a living emblem of trial and triumph. The climb had concluded, but its legacy would continue through her actions, through the guidance of Eli, through the inspiration offered to others, and through the transformed relationships with Ryan, Anna, and every member of the expedition. One evening, Clara received a call from Captain James Walker, the stern government official who had monitored the climb's compliance with safety regulations. His voice, usually formal and restrained, carried a note of warmth. "Clara, I want to commend you," he said. "You demonstrated that determination and ambition can coexist with responsibility and respect for safety protocols. Your leadership sets a benchmark for future expeditions. Thank you for proving that excellence doesn't require disregard for rules. It requires discipline and judgment." Clara felt a quiet pride, knowing that her careful planning and ethical decisions had been recognized not just publicly, but formally by authorities. Even Ryan became a frequent collaborator, offering insights from his perspective, while acknowledging the transformation Clara had sparked in him. Their mutual respect had evolved into a partnership grounded not in rivalry, but in shared commitment to mentorship and ethical climbing practices. Anna, ever her confidant, helped channel Clara's energy into structured programs, ensuring that their combined experiences reached a wider audience. Eli, as always, served as the guiding presence in the background, his quiet wisdom reinforcing the lessons that had begun on the mountain slopes. Clara realized that the summit of Mount Elbert was not merely a physical achievement, but a metaphor for the challenges life presented, moments when courage, judgment, and integrity intersected. She understood that every decision, every act of leadership or empathy created ripples far beyond the immediate moment. Standing once more before the Rockies, she smiled, recognizing that the mountain had given her more than a record of achievement. It had gifted her clarity, resilience, and a path to inspire others. The climb was over, but the journey, the legacy, was only beginning. A living, breathing testament to what is possible when determination meets heart, skill, and unwavering purpose. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.